Patayami
Sanje Chudan Soje Chana La Chanju Badu Dani Yesu Dagi Jijin Yewe Zona Ye Androla Benje Sanje Juho Sanje Chudan Soje Chana La Chanju Badu Dani Yesu Dagi Jijin Yewe Zona Ye Androla Benje Sanje Juho Shuo Sanje Chudan Soje Chana La Chanju Badu Dani Yesu Dagi Jijin Yewe Zona Ye Druba Shuo La Dang La Meme Dame Ji Hongbo De Jin Lo Su 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 La Chua Shabana Sanje Sambara Du Xin Dire Diwe Jiji Be Chen Dire Dire Ji Jiri Diwe Jijin Dire Jisa Be Dire Juba Dire Chuba De La Churu De Yin Kuwa Diwe La Bi Nyan Jia Shan Sa Su Sa Me Dang Be Dani Le Ba Tu La Tu Me Su Nyan Nyan Namo La Ye Kada Lu Dan Li Jia Chubu Wanda La Me Ye Kana Na Chuba Kun Jir Shan Nam Shi Sa Wa Tam Jia Ke Do Da Gu Che De Do 강계 계단 지보다 추디 내방지고 된진저 중성의 통한데 라차차로 오야 다 되နေတာ자바시를 가서 나나 치료니다 다단다게 냠선 녀월레 바까지 대사만이 깨와서 네 레다님모 세베다 레다님모 남도라 대다 저외 저완이 동반이도 템바주루체 오스바나시 젠다 디 가르송 거래서나 나다 치료니다라 세가라 나다 치료니다라 세가라 난다다 아니 치료는 다기와 나다 치료니 달라스 나단 다기 냠세네 살다 가사카니 가면서 와나시 전에 나 라시 추와츠 비츠바다 다기와 라시지 추와츠 비츠바 어디 말아 메바게 나라시니 추와다 달람 나라시니 추와츠 비츠바다 마유와라 메네 마유와 라시지 추와츠 비츠바 니오데 다단 다기 냠세나스 어테요데 세소나 아니 예월렘바 가주지나 나다 치료니다 다단다게 냠세나스 예월렘바 가주지 세가라 아니 예월렘바 테라 더바 예월렘바 다와 예월렘바 소도 자와 예월렘바 아니 나도 다와 예월렘바 아체니我应该我两把洗下过来，人多下去。아니 가서 뭐 쉬어 서도 되는데 대자체 대자 감순지 대자 아니 오라서 직단 마도 받겠다와 타다당 따와 천지당 로다당 어제 대체 따와 숨보디 따와 한번 따와 녀월렘 받더라说的这帮年我这个了俺出入的都乡镇年吧出入都是乡镇的钱俺打着打完年我两把得了俺打就打钱个了哦打给我三的呢年我两把搞给是吧年我两把打让他欺负你打了打给他说呢年我两把搞就去是年我两把搞呗可是那你叫我三这些吧，人家就往个叫些吧，就会是，
So here there is a verse from Nagarjuna's root verses on wisdom that says that if one extinguishes the view which is grasping at a self and grasping at the mind, so these two types of grasping at a self and grasping at a mind, if one is able to extinguish that, then all taking up this acquiring of the aggregates, that too will be extinguished. And if that is extinguished, then all sort of birth is extinguished as well. So we have these two types of grasping at the self as being intrinsically existent, and grasping at the mind as being intrinsically existent. And so if as long as one has those types of views, then one will continue to take rebirth within samsara. So one will take up the aggregates and so forth. But by stopping stopping that kind of grasping, by reversing those sorts of views, then all of the process of birth and so forth will be stopped as well. So here, where it says like these acquired things, it's referring to having any sort of wrong views. So the tawa. Niwa lagi tawa
niwa lemba doba niwa lemba ane dadu lemba niwa lemba dadu tawa niwa lemba chodu zimba niwa lemba.
I don't know what the no. So there will be the sort of attachment and desire of the three realms, and then these wrong sort of views that come out of that. So the wrong kind of view of the perishable collection, the wrong view of the self, and so forth, and taking up all of this sort of attachment and grasping of the desire realm. So by reversing, by extinguishing those views, one is able to then extinguish or get rid of the process of taking birth and so forth.
Oh yeah, that did it. Let a new namdole, Tata Joani, Tombani to temperature Senegala, Teneta, Tessanani Java says. Let a new Moseva Java Sepa. Let a new namdole, Tata Joani, Tombani to temperature Senegala, Carisore, as a letter you must less Sebegi. Ani lela se de jiki ani seba dan siba o siba ni wote o de duti lela ni mo seba ni siba se lela ani seba da siba lamba seba de seba teda kuna lonje ke ani chumu yi je ke namdo ya se ani seba 아니 대다 세바 세리 아니 가서를 취지 인지를 하신다 세바 대다 저와니 아니 동반이 하도 아니 동반이도 템퍼처 취지 인지를 하신지 취지 인수 세바 인상 아니 취지 인수 세바 빵바 다도 쓴거를
So then, if one is able to extinguish or get rid of this karma and the afflictive emotions, then that extinguishes or gets rid of the process of birth, of having to take on this sort of karma, and our afflictions give rise to this grasping or clinging, and that leads to taking existence. So if we are able to sort of pacify all of those elaborations or proliferations, then one achieves a kind of peace. So by extinguishing this wrong view that extinguishes then karma and the afflictive emotions that lead into us having to take up another rebirth, to go through this process of taking existence and so forth, then we are able to get rid of all proliferations, even the elaboration of grasping at things as being dual, and achieve a kind of peace.
Oh yeah, that tender with Tadan Dagiwa. Ani Rashini Chua Timbi Timba, Sebama Ponga Chebala, and Tadan Dagiwa Rashiji Mebatella Bokwe. That Tadan Dagiwa Rashiji Mebatella Bea de la Takasan Juntene Second. Dila Bandan Dawa Trabe Segala, that Tarashim Batala Bayatella, Dawa Trabe Dashikaso. Tatikasangama Shitsayima, Tela Tachi of Giovanni, Kashingo Namji Shela Ramaleb, or Rashin Days, which Shan Kalaya Ramaleb, or Namji Shan Kalaya Ramalebam, Madebam, Madembi, Takasori, or Rashin Days, or Rashin Day, and it had Tatu Chua Days. They Kasakita to Kabade, Mebade, Kasakitame. Seeing down Hashungo Namdi, Shana Ramalab, or Rashin de Kachitade, she Kasakit into Mebade, Kasakitame down. She shooted into Mebade and the Chishitame said to
So, in order to abandon, to get rid of or extinguish this grasping at an I and grasping at the mine, then we need to determine the meaning of the object to be refuted or negated. So we need to determine the what is lacking, the sort of object that it is that we are negating or refuting. So, from where we left off in the text yesterday, as the glorious Chandrakirti has said as well, here what we call self refers to any nature or state objects could have in which they relied on nothing else. The non-existence of this is what we call no self. So here, some kind of existence or nature, essence that objects could have in which they had to rely upon nothing else. They weren't contingent or dependent upon anything else. That's what we refer to as a self. And the lack of that in relation to the basis of a person is then the selflessness of the person, and the lack of that type of existence or that type of self in relation to another type of object, a phenomena, is then the selflessness of phenomena. So we first have to determine what it is that is being negated or refuted, and when this is applied to the person, we recognize the selflessness of the person, and in relation to other phenomena, we recognize the selflessness of phenomena.
Oh yeah, that tenderly, another castle, da Rashiji me batana paya, not Rashiji me batana payaki. Ani kasore ngatira tanya bengade sirkala tanya benga sirkala tangarazo saduna chebe lonche babo ngatro ngate segi tanya benga oti ngade che ro tanya benga de nganjing jida tege miyu che ro nimon mali jizola 大来情况落于同居记是吧？你们讲那么里就说了，大来情况落于同居记，谁个呢？你们比女人对家当写单了，这个拿起来说话，他们这就做了到了情况一样，你们讲那么里就说了，大来情况落于同居记的意思。 当年的有多钱呢？那就把一当年我把钱这个当年是大的，但是太阳饼啊的，太阳饼啊的，俺这没有当年的有多少钱呢？没有的钱呢，太阳饼啊的没有的钱呢，这来没呢。 当年的有多少钱呢？那就把一当年我把钱是，那就问大国的可是是那搞军大。 嘎起大的，我他呢，他让心去做的，先看了呀，让心不让马来被让心的，那搞起大的些，那就那个是当年的有多少钱呢？那就把一当年我把钱是，他也被干的没有的钱呢，刚大看了我被嫌，咱们点了被嫌的，他也被俺的钱呢，看嘎就对了，那嘎起大。 先看了呀，让马来被让心的，俺大的把这搞就大的，人家大起码的搞些大的，当俺们的他也不大，
So here then, when we are coming to determine the selflessness of the person and the selflessness of phenomena as well, we begin with the selflessness of the person. And so there is a conventional I or person. This is the one who enjoys various objects, the one who comes and goes, and all of those things. So that conventionally existent self or I is existent, and this is the basis upon which one then realizes or comes to identify the object of negation. So all of the various afflictions and so forth come out of our grasping at the I as having some kind of intrinsic or real existence. And so when one is trying to determine this, one takes first the self that is conventional conventionally existent, and then on the basis of that conventionally existent self, looks for the self that is grasped at as being intrinsically or truly existent, and that is the object of negation. So the one who is doing the meditating, the yogi here, has to distinguish between the conventionally existent self, which then is on that basis, one superimposes a self that has some kind of intrinsic or real existence. And so the first of these selves is the conventionally existent self. That isn't the object that is being refuted or negated. And then the second kind of self is this self perceived to have some kind of intrinsic existence, and that is the self that is the object of negation.
Oh yeah, tender vita, miu da de, miu da wang da ngate. Ani dashi dan, doshi la dana, par daba zam inde se gara, dashi, ari rangi pungbonga, lisun choba. 是吧？大西让给李生超把碰碰好的了，是吧？我大西前呢，刚才跟上的城市的，刚才你我那个碰碰好，我知道了到谁说那些多一个说，跟上的城市的，刚才你我那个碰碰好，我知道了到说那些前呢，安尼大西的啦，安尼让你去碰碰好的大西的钱。 是吧？我觉得俺那大把的碰碰啊，操咱们的了，但呢，俺那他另外我伢都俺那大把大玩一张，操咱了，但呢我伢都俺那大把怕大把咱们的事情，哦，大家怕大把咱们谁干了？怕大把咱们人家，那是可能讲呢，总是讲明白，哦。 大西的了，大学的马云把就过过来的，刚来等了大把年纪，大西的马云把就过的是，本来中华之前呢，没到除了说大话西诺是，我中华那些钱呢，我大学马云把就过过来的，因为啥？大西的顶，大西的大学的马云把，大西的顶都。 安尼派大把咱们都，安尼俺些弄咱们都，弄咱们的，安尼俺卡些，俺看见多少天吧的，是吧？现在大把怕大咱们的，现在是跟大新闻呢，要把的怕这个啊，怕大把咱们都大新闻呢，就在这面吧，
So here it says, now the conventional me, the one that does exist, is something we've created with a label, using some basis to take the label and some idea to give the label. So here, the basis of labeling or designation, the basis of imputation of the self of the person is these five aggregates. So these five, the aggregates that we have taken up, when we observe those five aggregates and project onto it this idea of self, or we label a self on that basis, then this is so the self so labeled is not the basis of designation. It is distinct from that basis of designation. So there is the label that we give to this basis. We impute or designate a self on that basis, but the thing that we have so designated is not the same as the basis. So on the basis of these five aggregates, these acquired aggregates, we project or designate this I, this self. But that doesn't mean that that basis is what it is designated as. So there's nothing on that basis of designation in the slightest that is the thing so designated. So when we are approaching this, we have to see that this basis which takes the label is not actually the thing so designated upon it. It is on the basis of observing the five aggregates that we then make this designation I or self, but that I is not identical with that basis of designation. We actually can't find even the slightest of that within the basis of designation.
Oh yeah, that is part of the 안지 다 내선도 지지가 시가 지지가 치와 추고 남지가 가라 라나 초신 그 하당 대다라 신비 최 탐제 때나 다바 인비체를 스디린 말이 랑당 아니 권도 소신사 다바게 소신게 하당 기 신비 최 탐제 아니 또바 파 다바 인비체 아니 또바 파 다바 자면인자 라왕도 마주바 랑거냐 마주바 라왕도 마주바 인자 라왕왜 뜻동바 인자 아니 다메바 是吧？然后出行给了他，他来去个切电呢，干个大瓦银币切日子，天这位俺那大家来说呗，他西单车哇，谁干了？俺那他西单车哇，越大当，没大当，你干了他当，你干嘛别让心一吧，电人别把马银吧。 让心一把马银把，电人没把马银把，让心一把的电人也把，你个马银把，你个样马银把，让心一把的电人没把，你个样让心一出马银把的，他西都下个的，是吧？我印象大家来做呗，他西单拆外，俺那大没别让心当把你，是我应该的考虑军政，电人大把印象，让我都没主标，他都是我的。 我听那些讲的，俺那那时候给去个水阳啊，滚到个大把证据就没到我，滚到个大把证据就没也，多半怕大把证据就没到我，是一个，俺那多半怕大这么的，让心机让我们东北的，让我们东江，俺那样让我们出啊，就没得。 你先打啷个当家，打啷都拿我拿钱钱呢？让先去吃呗，当家，让先去吃啊，拿我给俺那就没到我说他都是吧？这个看见的，看这个谢中国人是那多半大把挣钱。
So here, where we recognize that everything is merely dependently designated, there are the lines in the ritual or the sadhana for Yamantaka that says that since every object is labeled independence, so here one is recognizing that the self, the person who is doing this practice, as well as all of the deities that have been visualized and so forth, are merely designated independence. They don't have any kind of intrinsic existence from their own side. They're merely something that we have designated as such, but they don't have any sort of intrinsic existence from their own side. And this kind of recognition eliminates the four sort of extremes of thinking that something is arisen from its own intrinsic existence or from another that is intrinsically existent, or from both self and other, or from nothing whatsoever. So this kind of understanding of how objects are merely dependently designated eliminates those kinds of extremes. And so there is also the same sentiment is expressed among other places in the ritual for the secret teaching of highest bliss, or actually yeah, so here it says, like an illusion just labeled with a concept. So although things appear as if they were intrinsically existent, as if they had some kind of existence from their own side, some sort of intrinsic or inherent nature, they don't actually have that sort of existence. So the way that they appear is different from the way that they actually are, and in this way they are illusion-like. So these passages get at understanding that things are merely designated dependently, but don't have any sort of intrinsic nature.
Oh yeah. Oh, 写书把说天地来光把这钱多把大事，但写不对钱呐，俺那男主拿马家把现主来接过来是吧？男主刚才男娃的落天地来有啊，多把钱完了有啊。 是吧？落天的，到了前马当，有到别落天的来呀，刚才男主有啊人，刚才天不出啊，让新出啊那嘛，因让男主了马在把人，咱先主来结果的，是先主的，咱先主的，让个才你做嘛，电把做把先把给老几人过完一了，得了他们面前。 人电子英国话印象，修的现在拿走了嘛，就把现在了干加国外是，干这样哪有没干巴是？哦，干这这干了，落地个哪有的没干巴？ 아니 나요 요아체 현유 아니 가서 현유의 가르에서는 안에 대바 주바집이 린진 대기 현유 대바 주바의 인상 현유 갖고래 현유 갖고 그래
So here then it continues saying, if we really get into fine detail or examine this in detail, we must analyze not the way the object appears to us, but rather how we grasp them. So the appearance of objects is their conventional existence. So we aren't trying to deny that objects appear and that they appear as though they had some kind of intrinsic existence, but rather one is trying to get at the way that we are grasping them as such, and that is the object that is trying to be refuted or negated. So we aren't trying to deny or refute the appearance of objects, but rather how we grasp at them, how we are sort of clinging to them as having this kind of existence. So thus it is too with the object we want to see does not exist. It is not that we will deny what appears to us, but rather what we grasp. So we are not trying to deny or refute the appearance of things, but rather what one is trying to get at is how we grasp them.
Oh yeah, that's it. That's it. That was a catch here to some good study. 找不到，这位去的，地到了这里的屋，他看的是呢，多半怕，其他那个我看着就也那样，俺那让我都没吧，多半怕打不着没吧，有几个呢，军事人没吧，是吧？我多半怕打不进吧，怕打进吧，真的为大西天了。 아니 또봐 파다 봐 인자 아니 다 바다사기 다시시다 도저기 또봐 니거와 인자 아니 다시다 안 도저기데 도저를 땡거와 도저기 또봐를 땡거와 아니 见贤了的那穷啊 见贤了的那穷啊，就见贤了的这位，你的其他那个我一呢，可就见贤了的那穷啊，一在对。 那，毕竟见贤了对吧？因为穷啊，也呢，切贤了对那穷啊，贤了对我了对那穷啊，你见贤了对那穷啊，人家第一，俺那让都没住吧，让我那没住吧，那玩意过来是，
So here then, this is an important point. This then can be like our refrain. Let me realize that these things are labeled the creation of concepts. So there's nothing whatsoever that is autonomous, that has a sort of independent existence from its own side, from the side of the object, from the basis of designation. That they can exist only in dependence on a basis to receive a name and someone to give the name. So all things are dependently originated because they arise from this process of designating, of a basis of designation and being given that designation. So there is nothing whatsoever from the side of the basis of designation that there's some sort of inherent or intrinsic existence, but rather the existence of things can only be established in this in this process of dependent designation. So let me realize as well that they occur in dependence on many other factors. So everything is also dependently originated in that it comes from causes and conditions, as well as having to rely upon parts and so forth. So not only are things designated dependently, but they also arise from causes and conditions and depend upon their parts. And so therefore, they don't exist out there on their own. There's no way that there can be some sort of intrinsic or inherent existence from the side of the object, but rather they are completely dependently originated, and it is based upon our designating them as such that we can even speak of their existence.
Oh yeah, that's it. 같이 현유양 세다 나유 막잡아 현유 가세 같이 현유양 현유의 컨디션에 현유양 현유의 예매 답을 가서세 안에 가서래 현유의 예매 답을 가서 다 또배 팔다면 아데 민비세 또배 팔다면 아데 타냐병 아데체 타냐병 아데 가야 매바체 是吧？潘家兵啊，在潘家的下过一在听，多半怕在被潘家兵啊的感染没把钱，我那开始搞过的是呢，怕大兵啊的明白，安尼我可能跟我那出发的不，是吧？我他。出라완도 출발다 버기 아니 가서래 라완도 출발 나도 따지 아니 라완도 출발다 출발 나요 아주 가고래 라완도 출발 나한테 까지 나줘라 대이자 마테미 비 코란 거는 출발다 오시 차르베 라완도 출발치 차르베 차르베 나디 리슴라 때네 따바자 많이 봐 텐자위 라완도 출발 나지 가서 라완도 철중하지 가정하지 리슴 때네 따바자 많이 봐 리슴라 때네 사바자 파 따바 많이 봐 리슴 이기 때네 아니 아니 봐 라완도 출발 차와지라서 리슴 이기 때문에 다시 풍부 초비 때네 아니 마시 아니 출발 라완도 출발대 뒤현유들이
So here again, the object of negation is not the conventional I, which is the mere designation on the basis of the aggregates, but rather this the object of negation is the sort of conceived object, or this this object that we are grasping at as if it had some sort of existence from its own side that wasn't just merely imputed or merely dependent, merely designated upon the basis of designation. So here it says, let's talk then about the thing we will see does not exist in terms of the object we grasp. When we start to examine whether it exists or not, the image that comes to our mind is not the me that we have created with our labels, but rather some me that looks like it exists out there on its own. So the conventional I or me that is merely imputed upon the basis of designation is not the object of refutation here, but it is the I that appears to have some sort of existence which was not merely designated, but had some sort of intrinsic or inherent existence from its own side that didn't have to depend upon anything else whatsoever. So the object that we grasp, therefore, consists not of the me, which is nothing but a label applied to the collection of body and mind, but rather of the me which seems to exist out there on its own, on top of the body and mind together. So the object of negation, the object that we are refuting, is that sort of I, which appears as though it had some kind of intrinsic autonomous existence out there on its own without having to rely upon this process of designation.
Oh yeah. 他这点的是多多，你是民呢出发的现有人是，他这个别了，卡上去完了，现在呢，别那他这了，那么卡说明白就是怕别干了，他这了明白怕烫完了，烫不他把了住的那么多，我都怕的大。 是吧？他呢，怕的大话的钱呢，他这个呢，就出把那话的干啥嘛的是，那话的干啥嘛的是，他这那话他都住的准备现有，他这住银巴的，他这住银巴的干啥银巴现多是，是吧？他这里想个有啥就在那是吧？别那他这了明白也，爸爸那他把住了那么多，怕的大。 多半怕大，这些怕大把的钱呢，他这个呢，就出把那我的，干啥嘛也不钱，出把那我那嘛是，他把准备准备现有的，他那我的出把准备现有的干啥也不钱，这别了嘛下，
So here then it is this grasped object or conceived object, not the conventionally existent I or object that is merely designated, which is that thing that we are trying to negate or refute. So to give an example, let's say for example that dusk has fallen, so it's getting dark, and you see some piece of rope with a checkered pattern. At first you put a name onto it and think to yourself, oh my, a snake. And so here in this example of mistaking a striped rope to be a snake, it's not the appearance that is being negated, but rather our grasping at that object as having some sort of snakeness from its own side. So after that, you forget it was you who put the name on it, and it starts to look like a snake out there on its own. The way it looks when it is not what we want to see doesn't exist. Rather, what we want to deny is what we grasp, that the thing we hold could really exist the way it looks to us to exist. So here again, we are not denying or refuting, negating the appearance of this striped rope as being a snake, but it's our grasping onto it as such, the conceiving of it or holding on to this idea of it being a snake, having some sort of existence as a snake from its own side, that one takes as the object of negation.
Oh yeah, that's a bella shane. Ngala tanya bi ngata la chaba chibi sana. Ngala chaba chibi chang se. Da rangi bene o mingdi mine pangane chona mingkare ina ro mingkare ina rangi mingi panganda bo chona nas. Thoma ani ngape nyamdo thangbo tanya bi ngata sharas. 대도 소시 타냐 병아트 샤르스 배냐 타냐 병아트 샤르 대지 아니 대타냐 별로라 차주치 로 아니 대제라 아니 다 칭한 바지 꾸마다보 저랑 꾸마레 세와다보기 아니 스사나 아니 텐더비 나가라 아니 같이 가도 샤와데 레라에 송고아레 드디 잠바 아마 배에 나가라 아니 가서래 나 배냐마 마도 나 릴링와데 타지를 가제 나제 슈차 나차 나데 가진 하지 마셔봐체 다 가서래 견증원에 조그마를 세웠다 보지 아니 세서나 아니 나지 슈치로 치니 내 그만 마셔봐라 말라 아니 방 그마셔고 년주 죽사 년주바데 년주바데라 텐더에 년주사기 나데 숙심을 치경 년주사데 나데 풍보소 강라야 마다베 아니 나지 샤르기와 이장 대선 거래 나라 년주 내 미다 냥도 나다 나시 답에 가사시와 나시 수도 유인원의 리는 샤와데라 라 나다 나시 수도 리는와 샤베 나데 리는이 나데 샤베 오 대다도 아니 zembaade teta do chubaade kachi nawa chade tetara nga tanya도 나담데 메가바라세 당 야게 평균 주에 tanya게 나온다지 nga다 메가바 치망아 추두도 추두도 된로 나와야 메가 추두도 된로도 나위 nga데 야 미다바 nga 추두 추바데 가고레세 하고서 야
So we can investigate this on the basis of the person, the I. So to give an example of this, suppose someone comes up and calls you out by name. So when this person first calls to you by your name, at first the me that appears to you is simply the conventional one. You think to yourself, he's calling me. And so at that point where you're just initially being called on, you you give rise to a sense of this conventional I. So this is not yet the object of refutation. But then, for example, someone says to you, oh, so you're the thief, or something like that. And then your me starts getting stronger and stronger. And so it's at this point, when someone says something rude to you or mean to you, accuses you in some way, that the object of refutation, the I that is somehow existent from its own side, able to set itself up, this I gets stronger and stronger as you're being like called out or accused of something. And so initially, when they first just called to you, you didn't have this object of negation strongly in your mind. But as they are accusing you, this I that seems to have an existence from its own side, able to stand on its own somehow, gets stronger and stronger. So you start thinking to yourself, why is he pointing the finger at me? It wasn't me who stole it. They can't blame me. You start saying me, and me, and this me starts looking like a me that can stand on its own, a very vivid me. So this then is the object of negation, this really sort of vivid, strong, able to set itself up, not dependent or reliant upon anything else. The I that one is grasping at in that way, that is the object of negation here. So now we are not denying the existence of the ordinary conventional me that first appeared to you, nor are we denying that the me appeared to stand on its own, that it appeared to truly exist. But rather what is being denied is that sort of me could exist as such. So it's not the appearance of such an I that is being denied, but rather that it could have that type of true existence that's not contingent or dependent upon anything else.
Oh yeah, kendisrewa kaasore keda nga tanya nandamde mega sege tanya nandamde mega bade nga tanya nandamde yarwa temega nga churudu denrudu nawa teang mega de nga churudu denrudu nawa teang mega churudu denrudu nami nga teang mega churudu denrudu nami nga teang yu 다 워낙 가려가 그래서 당하 코나 추두도 추밤 아니 알아왕 추바 뭐 라시지 추바 아니 대응하다 까네 리스미라 마담바 마 코랑 그거는 추바 링링보 매바데 똥 참지 상하나 오메다와 한번 예봐 송배서
So again, we're not denying the existence of the ordinary conventional I that first appeared to you when someone called your name, nor are we denying that I appeared to stand on its own, that it appeared to truly exist. So as that the sense of I got stronger, and you have this sense of an I that is able to stand on its own, appearing to truly exist, we aren't denying that the I appeared in that way. So we are not even denying that the me or the I that appears to stand on its own, the I that appears to truly exist, that appearance was there. That's not what's being denied. Rather, we are denying or refuting that I could actually stand on its own, that I could actually exist naturally. We are denying that any I could actually naturally exist. So this is the object of negation then. It's not the appearance of the conventional I, or even that the I appearing to have some kind of intrinsic existence from its own side. That appearance is not being denied, but rather the way that one is grasping at it as such. So, and when you deny this me, you see that this I does not exist. When for you, this When for your this so vivid I that stands out there on his own without relying on the two of body and mind ceases to be, and all that's left is a single emptiness of him, then, as the sages say, you have first found the view of the middle way. So when you are able to actually find the proper object of refutation or negation, this I that is so vivid and stands out there on its own without any sort of reliance upon anything else, that on the basis of the collection of body and mind appears to have its own sort of solid existence from its own side. When you recognize that that can't exist as such, then it's said that you've first found the view of the middle way, and that you have found the path that pleases the victors.
아니 가주대다 단단 신송아 다제 단단 송아 나신 전에 가소래 마타니 나한테 대한민국아 추류도 된루도 나와 대한민국 아니 추류도 된루도 나면 나 대한민국 송아래데 저와 다 한번에 로점에 가서가 추류네 된루도 주면 나대당 타냐면 나대 아니 얘와 침도 와 아니 나도 샤도 잠바 된루 그나마다 샤와체 매바 인장 아니 타냐병 나다 된루 가장하게 나와 얘와 제미도 내가라 내가 비내가라 아니 나 코란데 나주 코란 나 나주 타냐빌로라 나주 코란 아니 나 된루도 나주 코란마도 매바 인장 된루도 나와도 고고와 인장 당고 시와 나신신에 나와 linse rashi 주변 나도 대파 막 샤네 아니 대마인 바기 나와 linse 가라 가주라찬지 초가 나한테 세대 어떤 나시전에 나와 코란 막아봐 대마인 바지 가게 과야기 아니 가차지와 말했어 나도 코란 같이 나도 예장是吧 시딘 다다 가사 나도지 인장 나도 코랑 같이 나와대 마도 뒤에 나도 다다 가사를 된다 가주 가자치당 타야비와 아니 샤야기 가자니 어디 이체미도 봐 인장 토말로 자주 가라 아니 나든도 나도 코랑 가고야 해是吧 테네로야 림지 체 가라 테네 같이 다다 같이 다 가가 라와 렌렌데 가져 가라 안에 대쇼라 가자 가비 쇼도 타냐면 아데 안에 키면 좋아 안에 타냐도 마데 류와제다 되는 신이 온 거라 봐
이는 당보 로장도
당보 나주 커랑가 마 나주 커라라 된두고 나주 마데 매바 인자
So here again, the object of negation, what is being negated is not the conventionally existent I, nor is it the appearance of an I that has some sort of existence from its own side, but rather it's the way that we grasp at it as being, as having that sort of existence, which is able to stand on its own, existing in a way that doesn't depend or rely upon anything else. But so when we are first training the mind in emptiness, we can't really distinguish between the appearance of the conventional I and the appearance of this I that is the object of negation, the appearance of an I that is somehow set up from its own side, not dependent or contingent upon anything else, this I which appears as though it were truly existent. So at the beginning, we are unable to distinguish between the appearance of the conventional I and the appearance of the I as being truly existent. So at the beginning, we have to refute the appearance of the I as being truly existent. We are unable to fully separate out or distinguish between the appearance of the conventional I and the appearance of the truly existent I. And it is then at the beginning we have to sort of is it refute the appearance? I mean Yeah, so refute the way that this I appears to us as being truly existent, and then later in our training we are able to fully recognize the way that the conventional I appears. What? Then you recognize the way that the object of refutation appears. No. Not appears. Okay, so at that point you can then properly see the object of negation. So at first you are just negating the way in which it appears to have true existence. It appears as though it has this true existence, but later one is able to properly recognize the object of negation. Is that?
Oh yeah, that is so. 텐다와데 다 진이 챘네 타냐병아당 아니라 가장아데 여와 챘니 가젤랑아 타냐병아데 아니라 샹칼라야 라말라베 아니라 라와마 추바기 링링보들 아니 링링보들 추바데 아니 가소레 키소나 로테르메 링링보데 메바보 아니 가서를 뒤에 똥바디 로라 차디 감바다 가서랑은 주에 똥바마 라완도 주에 똥바다 로라 상하면서 뒤에 가서 때네 따와 담보냐 같이 어 뒤에다 따와 담보냐 봐 이제 자와집에 남라 자와집에 남냐 봐 이세를 한 손이도 배셔를 자와집에 남 어디 샤이다 자와집에 남냐 봐 이세 대다자 장대 다된자나是다된자나缺他们讲我让我有主播都讲讲明年讲是大可算是完那些一些大된자나是个啦大西定都大西泡沫错吧么你是错比定都那些大된자为什么安尼咱那买也吧你就在那买吧泡沫我人买 풍부 초바야 마이 풍부 아니 소비 입이야 마이 다들이 임발라 아니 게레레 요이 이거 단네 다 가져 간지를 요아래서나 다든 자네 최담장 많이 반다라 어디를 많이 봐 타가라 아니 다 가르쳐래 라신지 동바 rồi 많이 받대 이 받대 돈이 예배 텐지래 rồi 많이 받대 돈이 예배 텐 이제 다든자네 최단자 도좀 주고 많이 장 세라다 많이 받대 돈만 예배 텐지 이 다든자 위선에 최단자 많이 장 최단지 매매 줘봐 최단자 많이 장 최단자 매매 줘봐 我看上去我那些많이 가자 고 멤버스 많이 받아 가자 고바 말에서 제지 민담 하마 류세가라 가사고라 다시도 고바 말에 제지 민담 하마 류세가라 민담지 아니 차와 친이지 가사치라고 와이다 와 민담지 차와 친이지 타녀도 나주 여바 잠지 아니 근데 차제 참아 님이 태그래 서 대자위 마데 장매도 마송와 민담지 리바게 민담지 태나 쉬베 아니 나은잠 대기 아니 타녀도 나주 여잠지에서 타녀도 나잠 디 근데지 차제 참아 님에도 태대
So eventually one is able to distinguish between the appearance of the conventionally existent I and that I that appears as though it were truly existent. And when you're able to distinguish between those, they appear to us as being mixed, but when one is able to identify the object of negation and actually see what it is that one is trying to negate or refute, and when you refute that I, and when you see that that I does not exist, this I that appears to stand out there on its own without relying on the two of body and mind, when that ceases to be, or one recognizes the non-existence, that type of I or self cannot exist, and and all that's left is simple emptiness of him, then, as the sages say, you have first found the view of the middle. So when one is able to recognize that this self, which is designated, this person or I, which is designated on the basis of the aggregates, does not exist in the way that it appears, that it doesn't exist out there on its own. When one is able to distinguish that from the conventionally existent I and negate it, then one has first found the view of the middle way, and then you've entered into this path that pleases the victors. So when you do this sort of analysis and you seek the thing with the name, you will never be able to find a single atom of anything in the universe that exists in itself. So if in the basis of designation of the person, the I, in the basis of designation of the aggregates, you search and try to find that I, that person, you investigate, seeing, well, is the I the collection of all of the aggregates? Is it each of the is it the individual aggregates? And you find that that sort of I, the thing that you have named, is not existent in that basis of designation. You'll never be able to find a single atom of anything in the universe that exists in itself. So that not finding of the thing so designated, that is emptiness. So although it is the case, though, that you are unable to find the thing within its basis of designation, that doesn't lead to a sort of nihilistic kind of a view. All the normal workings of the world, though, are quite logical and proper. Things make other things happen. Things do what they do, though all in only an apparent way, in a conventionally agreed upon way. So there's no doubt about the sort of logic and validity of karma, of cause and effect, of the person being able to carry out actions and so forth. But this coming to understand, coming to not be able to find any sort of the thing designated within its basis of designation does not lead to a sort of a total non-existence, but rather all functioning of cause and effect and so forth are totally valid and reasonable within that unfindability.
Oh yeah. That is so do you may do teddies. And it cause that did do some son to go. Tanya no do yet some G. And it do that Chama, you may do teddies, benas, Kamba Demba Truba do the Megan. Kamba do then so Demba Truba do the Megan. That can be Jujan Chode. Jujan Chode, Mindang, Dobe, Pa, Dazam to Truna. And it can be Chachatam Jelumid in Newatan. Yeah, you are, I say, what this would do, yeah, did you done?
So again, although these conventionalities are mere appearances, that doesn't mean that things don't conventionally work. This cause and effect, actions and so forth, they're all totally logical, valid within there being only mere conventionalities. So even though there's no true existence whatsoever, things function. They do so in a properly, in a conventionally agreed upon way. So a building, for example, can be without a single atom of true existence, and yet so long as the causes and the conditions for the building come together, so long as it exists solely by virtue of a name and our concept of it, then it can do everything a building is supposed to do, and perfectly so. So as long as the causes and conditions come together, things can function perfectly validly, despite lacking any sort of true existence from their own side.
Oh yeah, 드리스마를 가서 사이 tum부 우단 차고시 민다진 초바 마인바 추추주자와 갈라데세 사이 tum부지라 안에서 덤베 구샹지 잡아 안에서 이 tum부지라 덤베 구샹네 안에 우단 차당 스파 샹차에 차를 가라 안에 될라 덤베 구체파 민게 따와자도 덤베 꾸냐 좋아라 미게 따바자도 그냥 좋아 마오바나 라랑외네 라왕도 안에 산제지 구추바지가 말했어.
No. So, from a lump of earth, you can make a body of the Buddha and make a form of that body and have then respect for this body of the Buddha. But there's nothing from the side of that object that is established as being a body of the Buddha. So this is, again, when we designate something, we can give respect to that image of the Buddha, but that doesn't mean that there is something from its own side that establishes it as such.
아니 민게파 따바담도 안에 산제고 꾸냐 추바예자 가세라 사유민다진제와 쳐담라 파비투트데 대다다야 초비된중라 따담라 아니 내서나 소바 시주와 제바푸나 파연여와 서나 소바가 신주바다 소바게 아니 그와 주바 대신도야 칸바 소바텔라 때네 민게 칸바시 따와테나 아니 칸바거테 주문에 아니 칸바게 카레나 테다테 주바다 지바시 바이바레.
So, although this lump of earth that has been made into a body, an image of the Buddha, there's nothing from the side of that is established as really truly being a Buddha. Still, we can use this as a field to make offerings, to accumulate merit in relation to that image of the Buddha that we have created, and we can engage in offerings and accumulation of merit and so forth. And so, even though there's nothing from the side of the object, there's still functionality there. So it is the same with a building.
초바디 띵도 대다도바 아니 초바텔라데 멘테단 다와라 때네 아니다 대단 대기 그거 좀 있으니 아니 두가 대긴 말에 이러와로 대소하나시 전에 컴퓨터에 저대 맨답 맨나 또배 따와 담도 추나 아미 컴퓨터 탐제 루메도 니와탕 세대 다긴 말에.
No. So, just as it says here, a building, for example, can be without a single atom of true existence, yet so long as the causes and conditions for the building have come together, so long as it exists solely by virtue of a name in our concept, then it can do everything that a building is supposed to do, and perfectly so. So as long as these causes and conditions are together, have come together, then there is functionality, even with, despite the lack of true existence.
대신도 다 멜로나게 자신 아니 루루기나 시소나 제체다 어디야 야 예수다 멜로나게 자신이 수년양 생활대 아니 로라 나와 잠마도 그러와 로라 나와 잠당 제 저바 잠라 자신 니시 무슨 차다 무슨 차양 아니 수년 나와 잠대기 아니 가서래 랑기 샤리라 소와라 나로 예매 소 아니 기내 그 차제는 사태봐.
So, in that same way, the reflection of some object in a mirror, too, may never be more than just something that appears to the mind and it gets itself a name. It may never win any endorsement as being the object itself, but it can still exhibit all the normal workings of causation. So, although, for example, a reflection in a mirror is something that is just a mere appearance and it appears to the mind and it's given some kind of a name, that doesn't preclude its having functionality. So although it might not, as it says here, win any endorsement as being the object of itself, it can still exhibit the normal workings of causation, even the reflection of something in a mirror.
呀，把路路小姐写吧你，前面浪都撒我心，那咱把马多然后呢，从我为主吧，这样没说那一些个卡死的，那我教堂的没弄到数年错吧了，但呢，俺那数年那咱的马多没弄个那数年然后呢出吧几元呢，俺那数年当。没弄当前些马这边那个那样，俺那他开始说的，前些数年有过他有捐有万一张，没弄到数年前些才把了单呢，俺那那咱们，那咱们蛮多，好像我也做干没吧，
So here, when you have the causes and conditions come together, when you put a face in front of a mirror, there will be a reflection of that face. If it had some kind of true existence, then even when the mirror wasn't meeting with that face, then there would be able to be a face in the mirror. So here, it's as long as the sort of causes and conditions come together, then there is a normal working of causation. You see a reflection of a face in the mirror.
yeah, that didn't say. And also, you may say, you know, Tabayano, Telsiri, Tanya do Yebe, Yoga Chaba. Tendando Mebe, Ani, Mego Michaba. Yes, Tendando Mebe, Mego Chet Michaba, my Case, Tanya do Yebe, Yoga Chet. Tendando Mebe, Ani, Migo Michaba, my Tendando Mebe, Meba Yens. Tendamba Meba Yens. Tanya do Yebe, Yeba Yens. Tendamba Mebe, and Tendando Mebe, Migo. Michaba Mayens, Tenda to Menayang, Meba Mare, Yabares, Tenda to Mebe Miko Michaba is a tender to Mejang, Ane Yabares, Michaba. Yinjang, Tenda to Mebe Megoche, Tanya to Yabang, Tenda to Mena, Ane Tayemi get our Kalang, what this one got it, Tanya to Yabi Yogo Chechins, Tanya to Yabi, Tenda to Meba Mego Chepte, Chidan Mego Mijeti Chidana go Chanam Tenda by Megan, Tanya to Yaba Izang, Meba Mayimba, Yaba Izayam, Tenda Mego Michabayam.
So, like the reflection of a face in a mirror, this reflection may be nothing more than an apparition, but it can still show you whether you have a spot on your face or whatever. So here, this kind of conventional existence, when the causes and conditions come together and it leads to an appearance of something, then this is why we say that to exist, it's enough to exist conventionally. So conventional existence, according to this school, suffices for existence. You don't need to have some kind of true existence to suffice or be enough to say that things exist. But not existing ultimately is not enough to not exist. So not having ultimate existence does not suffice to say that something does not exist. So here, there are some who sort of have a view that says that things are neither existent nor non-existent, and sort of their measures for what suffices for existence are different. But here, according to the Prasangika school, it's to say that something exists, it is enough to have it exist conventionally. But if something does not exist ultimately, that's not enough to say that that doesn't exist. It does not suffice for non-existence.
Oh yeah, that then you go to the level Siena, and the landing was to drop on your days. Oh, then you go that, then you tell me Yarwa. Then you go to the level Siena, landing was to drop on your day, landed the chill to grace. Only you give a cheva, that they were Chuma Yazang, and then give us out Sobalak, and then Jambata. You make it whatever the Dunga Juma Yeda, make a bomb at the teacher drova, and then I was shoot up on Yedi, Landella, teacher dirty. They indi, Gedile, they would do so much over Chuma. Or you give whatever the wood the water, you make it whatever the wood Dunga, and the saucer macho Manorwa. Majuma did then let you 但这几天让些没把写完了。俺那他也咱们都，但就跟着轮没都，俺那太把手机块的是，俺那块的宽带机，宽带，然后宽带给宽就别人别往不当，老别人别往多些别连着了，我定然也把用过来，说这样，
So, here, actually, any person who really understands dependent origination in the sense that we've just described it, begins to develop a strong recognition of the laws of actions and their consequences, and they become more and more important for him. So, here, when one has determined that to exist conventionally suffices for existence, one actually gains a stronger kind of faith in karma and cause and effect, in the fact that virtuous actions will lead to happiness and non-virtuous actions will lead to suffering. So being careful, cautious with regard to non-virtues and striving to engage in virtues becomes more and more important for this person. So, and this is why, first of all, good deeds lead to pleasure and bad deeds lead to pain, and each cause is connected to its own result. It can never go wrong somehow and produce the other result. This invariable relationship comes from dependent origination. So one comes to recognize that karma is invariable, that causes and effects are not variable in any way, but that they are dependently originated means that a particular cause will always lead to a certain kind of result. And so once you understand the sense in which dependent origination refers to any lack of natural existence or existence from its own side, then you will understand by implication that dependent origination in the form of cause and effect is, in a merely conventional way, entirely proper or infallible. Then this then allows you to gain a total conviction toward the laws that govern all actions and consequences, whether they be those within the circle of life or those beyond it. So again, whether it is referring to the sort of stages of engaging with samsara or the stages of reversing, getting out of samsara, these are all perfectly valid, logical, and reasonable.
他碰不错吧？俺小把的碰不错吧？闲了电把银张，俺那闲了电把银张，闲了啥来吧？闲了啥来把银张，闲了啥马来吧马银吧？俺那让西吉嘛猪巴当，错吧？闲了电白，俺那闲了啥来吧？没闲了电把银张，闲了啥马来吧马银吧？咱让西吉嘛猪巴当。让现今马主把印章，俺那军队太把要的，军队太把的凶的是，让现今出呢，俺那军队咋能没有吧？是吧？军队这边那下没太把的，还是这个没动呢，就嘛没进去不没，怕白点把西欧呢，吃了没把他话就是现在，你怕把。这刚说的，早些的说话那些去看的这个没动那些，其他我的参加让些去出来，当把马人把让些去出吧去那是吧？这个没人中文没进就把没去，就来带来这个中文要骂的是，没得看的是呢，有的我让我都出吧人家，后来才记着，让我都出吧了才去，吃吧他也没吧。我咱也没把去搞的是，他们就马人把人呐，俺那建议这就过来就是这样没吧，看上就马人把过来，然后就收来，我那过来才去跟那些没得吧，建议千万没做吧，让现在出来建议千万没做吧，先看了让马来把做把印章，建议千万没做把印章，看的这个没到呢，今晚没进去把没去，有了的呢，这个今晚没把印章。俺那就规定了带呢，俺那这不都天今晚没做啊？就规定了带呢，这个今晚这个都天没做嘛当，就规定俺呗， 吧？就군중 가배 아니 가서래 제우 동안 가봐야 매죠 봐. 是吧？ 가데 누구 메도나 주만 매지 주바 매스. 대인상 군중 가봐면은 군중 빵밥이 군중 빵밥이 과봐야 매봐. 군중 빵밥이 과봐면은 군중 빵제지 아니 남대야 매봐. 이상 대마 시고대다 매봐 가서 타와 조래 사랑시지 주바 주나 대마 시고대 마 매봐. 왜 뭐지 안에 됐다. 네 이제 말해 이걸 요 말해.
이제 요
왜 뭐야 되죠.
So we can say then that because it depends on some other group of things, no object can exist naturally. So because everything depends upon something else, there's no sort of autonomous existence from the side of the object, something that there is no existence where something doesn't have to rely or depend upon other things. And so because that is the case, no object, nothing can have this kind of intrinsic existence where it is autonomous or independent, not dependent, reliant upon anything else. And the fact that nothing exists intrinsically is what makes cause and effect perfectly plausible. Because actually, if things had some kind of intrinsic existence, then cause and effect would not be tenable. There would be no way for causes to bring about results if the cause was intrinsically established. It would be unchanging. It wouldn't have the ability to bring forth a result of any kind. So, there is a verse where it says that all inner and outer phenomena are not intrinsically existent or intrinsically established. If they were, then there wouldn't be causes and conditions. There wouldn't be any sort of causality. Causality would no longer be tenable. And if you can't perform actions, if causes don't lead to results, because if the cause was intrinsically existent, it would never change. It could never bring forth results. So if there was some kind of intrinsic or true existence, then there would be no arising and no destruction, and there could not be the presentation of the Four Noble Truths, or the Four Noble Truths would not be tenable. They wouldn't be plausible or valid within a context where there was some kind of true or intrinsic existence. So if causes could not bring forth results, then you couldn't have the origin of suffering leading to the truth of suffering. There wouldn't be that kind of causality. And in the same way, there couldn't be the truth of cessation as a result from practicing the path, because there wouldn't be this ability for causes to bring about results. So if it were the case that things had some kind of non-contingent intrinsic nature or existence from their own side, then there could be no arising, no destruction, there would be no samsara, and it wouldn't be possible to get out of samsara. There would be no nirvana, because one couldn't achieve a cessation by means of cultivating the path. So if there were this kind of true or intrinsic existence, then cause and effect would not be valid, would not be tenable.
Oh yeah, that then I just don't go at it. Rashi Jumna, I didn't do what you want, Meba. Then did what you want, said the Kadijila Segore, Yana, you tell it than I give. Yana Rang Shashal than a Tubach Sokor. Rashi Jituna, and the Jujanji Chawachu by the Kawa in the Ranchi Jituna, then my uncle. Then you do what you want, Mayana, and the Dunga Mayan. Dunga Mena, then you did Mayana, Dunga Yaba Kalaso. Meda Dunga Kansum Barashi, your Mayan, and so on. I said, Meda Babi Mena, and the Dunga Yameba. Then my said, and the Rashi Chuba Yena, and the Chishi could do too much, so could you Yaba Mayan. That the Chuba de Sungu said it was here, do not Rashi Juna, the Lamla Jana Tennessee. Then Mana, that you go Dua said, then you go Dua de Neji Sabe, the Neji, you go Dua the young Segmari. Neji Sabe, de la you go Dua, Uncle Rawan to Madrubade. Rawan to Madrubade. 라운드 두발에 자체 메타바 이자 내년 누구 두와 소당 아니 신우 라신이 주나 아니 신우의 감방어 줘야매봐 봐 토마 라신이 주발에 코랑을 내가 마도 그 라운드 두발에 자체 아니 코라 규전지 지수매봐 매와 이자 아니 신우 라신이 주나 신우 감부 주와서 매정 왔다 남라 맞잖아 되는 말에
So, because everything is dependently originated, then cause and effect is tenable, is logical or valid. If something were established intrinsically, established by means of its own characteristics, then we couldn't have a cause and effect. So, everything is dependently originated in these senses of dependent origination of causes bringing forth results. So, things are dependently originated in that they depend upon causes and conditions, and they're also dependently originated in that they depend on their parts and so forth. If something had intrinsic existence, then it couldn't change. It couldn't bring forth an effect. There couldn't be the truth of the origin leading to the truth of suffering, and there couldn't be the truth of the path leading to the truth of cessation. So if things aren't impermanent, if they don't have this nature of constantly changing, then we couldn't have any sort of suffering. There wouldn't be the suffering of samsara. And if things had an intrinsic existence, then there would be no origin of suffering, there would be no cessation from that suffering and so forth. So cause and effect would not be valid, would not be tenable if we had this kind of intrinsic existence. So suppose and the fact that all the workings of cause and effect are perfectly plausible is what allows seeds to turn to sprouts and sprouts to grains and all the rest. So if it were not the case, then seeds of barley or whatever, if they existed naturally, then they could never turn into sprouts. If a seed existed intrinsically as a seed, it would never change into a sprout. It would only remain as that seed. In order for a seed to be able to turn to a sprout, it has to be dependently originated. It has to lack that kind of intrinsic existence. And so it's only because all things lack that kind of existence that seeds can turn into sprouts, and sprouts can give us grain and so forth. But so if this were not the case, and seeds of barley or whatever existed naturally, then they could never turn into sprouts. Neither could children ever turn into adults, or anything of the like ever occur if they all existed naturally. So if there were this kind of intrinsic establishment, then we could have no changing of things, not a seed leading to a sprout or children growing into adults. All of that would be invalidated by the inherent existence of things.
Oh yeah. 자셔 가수 간송어서나 가대 라신 얘기니 모두 시와 많이나 되게 제다 용시 주 대신도니 천예지 반당 온도 제와다 공당 안 타바 제와 타바입니다. 가대 라신 얘기니 용시 시와 많이나 아세 용시 시와이나 어다 라신지 좀나 안에 동아 용시 시와지 용시 그 말에서 나를 마셔봐 시와 된 거요. 용시 시와 나를 마셔봐 코랑 마셔 라신지 주바인자 아니 동아 마셔봐 가서래 동아 마셔봐 가랑 아니 동아 시와 사제 내리지 풍부지 동아제 라신도 마셔봐 코랑 코 라신지 좀나 아니 사제 내리 풍부지 동아제 라신도 시와지 연구 말했어요. 가대 라신 얘기니 용서 시와 마이나 괜히 제다 용시 줄을 했어요. 용서 라신이 제와를 자제 못 해봐야 대신 되네 말을 군중 마방박 대양 아니 랑과 말했다네 군중 방와 대 용처그 말했어요. 대신 되네 어느 가대도 라신 얘기니 용서 시와 매주이나 괜히 제다 용시 대신 되네 천예지 방당 온도 차와당 군중 방와당 고방 온도 차와당 랑과 말라 싸와야 아니 용거 말이 상시지 주발에 자체 믿어봤다 다시 던져 가다 집어줘야
So there's also a verse from the Root Verses on Wisdom by Nagarjuna where he says that if things were intrinsically established, if they had some kind of establishment by means of their own nature, their own characteristics, then we couldn't ever whatever we don't know, we would forever not know. We can't learn anything new. We can't sort of change. We can't come to recognize our suffering situation. We can't come to know the truth of suffering in the process of how we have taken up these contaminated aggregates due to the force of karma. So he's saying that if there were this kind of intrinsic existence, one couldn't know the truth of suffering. One could not abandon the origin of that suffering. One couldn't actualize the cessations, and one couldn't meditate on the path. You couldn't do anything because there's not action and results when you have this kind of intrinsic establishment or intrinsic existence. So if we had this sort of situation, you couldn't remove the origin of suffering, and you couldn't, by meditating on the path, actualize the cessations, because cause and effect would not be tenable.
Oh yeah, that day, dendro rashi jumna tishin do dendro rashi jumna dendro wa, ane da rashi jumna dendro ne wa mato, ane jumege wa chawi dewu nyawan wa messaging. Semjen rashi jumna, ane semjen jikyen se ne, ane sanje wa ya message ba soji ta jyen mambo rashi jumla da. 예, 뭐보다 자와셔를 수만하시다 뒤집도 송거하래. 너나 뭐 마와게 라시지 맞으나 깨야 당하대. 가득이다 군도나 중앙 매지 집밤에 밥에 담바시오나 처럼에 바시를 소소. 라시지 집에 동나 자제 탐정 미대바 야당거죠. 어다디 아니 대나시 전에 라시지 집에 마동나 자제 탐정 미대바 어윤에 저 라시지 집에 마동나 자제 탐정 미대바 쥐마.
So here it continues saying that if the higher births existed naturally, then it would be impossible for a person in a higher birth to fall into the hells. If ordinary living beings existed naturally, then it would be impossible for such a being to become a Buddha, and so forth. The logical problems of something, of being something naturally are many. So here, if it were the case that we were intrinsically established, that we had this kind of, as it's using here, natural existence or true existence, then there would be no way to remove those kinds of faults that would allow us to achieve Buddhahood. Those faults would be intrinsically existent. They would be sort of naturally or really established, and we couldn't overcome them in order to gain Buddhahood. We couldn't, if things were intrinsically existent, then as the verse from Nagarjuna said, none of the four truths would be tenable, because cause and effect would no longer be tenable. So having this kind of intrinsic existence, inherent existence, precludes cause and effect. There's no way for cause and effect to function within that kind of existence. So without having this lack of inherent existence, we couldn't have cause and effect. So Nagarjuna articulates this in a verse where he talks about that if there were intrinsic existence, then the Four Noble Truths would not be tenable, that those relationships of cause and effect. But if things lack this kind of intrinsic existence, then all of those things are possible.
Oh yeah, 다디네 가서 산제바 미세바 쳐지 깨망스 대나 군대 땡중탕 라시 매바니 지조지 지조와세나 라시지 매바죠 라시지 매바데 조토바데 땡중기 비군den지 아니 라시지 매바죠 봐 라시지原来 땡중 좀 매도 봐 인자 라시지 매 군대 땡중당 라시 매바니 지조수 아니 지조와세 라시지 동바당 아니 다 가서래 두단 대비 내가 남자 그렇게 된중요데 지레 지토바 동단 된중 지레 지자도 도다 참모 자식 군대비 루루루산 대니 체디네 로산 제비 때는 자와서 전에 저 파원가 뒤잡아 그 소나시 전에 동바 아니 라신 지지 동바당 땡중 랑그 주전에 때는 좀 차셔라 주에 땡중이 오데 동단 땡도 지레 지초소체 지소치 지초와 동바 땡중 그 시위 초소초와 지레 지소초와 我当当点就记来记着说，记下就叫土把钱钱，你多白大怎么了？你钱钱他们家叫土啊，红的下班那些，当当点就记来记着说上月过呢，到沉默钱钱滚台北这一去当那个去那没给大娃怎么了？你滚台的所谓钱钱他们家叫土把的是，到达沉默去路上是，如果我路几路上。我的也把路上等你吃的呢，是我路上不得，天天给告诉来，也把啥话钱给，讲过那么装好去被打把的家伙明白都是不的，
So here then. These two principles, cause and effect, or dependent origination, and the fact that nothing exists intrinsically, that nothing has that kind of inherent existence, go hand in hand, each supporting each other. So here, the positing of cause and effect, or of dependent origination, allows for one. When one recognizes that all phenomena lack this kind of intrinsic existence or inherent existence, that allows for one to posit to have cause and effect be valid, have certain causes lead to certain effects. So these two understandings, the validity, the functionality of cause and effect, and the lack of intrinsic existence, are mutually supportive. They are mutually beneficial. So they aren't in any kind of opposition to each other, but rather each one helps the other, so that when one understands that things lack this kind of intrinsic existence, inherent existence, then one is able to present dependent origination, as in that things come, that certain causes lead to certain effects. So this Pavonga Rinpoche had a verse earlier, I think, where he was talking about that all inner and outer phenomena, when one understands them to lack inherent existence, then one comes to realize the way of Nagarjuna. And if one strays from this path that has been presented by Nagarjuna, one strays from the proper understanding. So this kind of sort of compatibility between the ideas of the validity of cause and effect and the lack of intrinsic existence, when these two appear simultaneously, when they appear in harmony with one another, then one has had a proper understanding of the view.
Oh yeah, that is. 天眼这个在那开始到处的清晨呢，他说吧，到一节把马作为处理那是他到一节把马作为处理了，那才年才他到一节把马作为处，早晚来那我等着路上买把汤，当把开连车有可完你，其实说那我提手这他都有光把到啊没事是吧？他的在我可能个存大山了，那我等着路上买把是，安尼他可完就到个人吧。 아니 줄에 되는 대우 좀 하게 된데 루와 매바 줘봐 태당 대조도 잡아 아니 대내에 거원 도저가 좀 봐대 라시지 동바 좀 해줘봐 라시지 동바 줘도 잡아 아니 거원 도저가 좀 봐, 비례가 좀 봐대 좀 해줘봐 어디 나왔던데 누가 매바다 동바 칼렌트에 거원이 시시소소 나와 테스트就是说说那我提水都他都有光把刀把没晒的他这里基本找我可能能赚钱了
So then this turns to the next point, which is how to know when your analysis is still incomplete. So this is sort of the measure of recognizing when you have not yet found the view. And so here the root verse here reads as long as the two, the realization of appearances, the infallibility of dependent arising, and the realization of emptiness, the non-assertion of inherent existence, existence seem to be separate, there is still no realization of the thought of Shakyamuni Buddha. So here, if one is in a position where when you try to posit the dependent origination of things, so the appearance of things as being infallibly dependently originated, if that makes it so that you are unable to posit a lack of intrinsic existence, or the other way around, you try to posit a lack of intrinsic existence, and then the infallibility of karma, the stages of engaging in samsara, as well as those for reversing that, no longer appear to be tenable, no longer appear as logical, then one has failed to find the view of the Buddha. If these two views seem to be in opposition or to not be able to arise together, then there is still no realization of the actual intention of the Buddha.
Oh yeah. Keta kombe tawi chapa zona. Ani da tende da tongba ni jizuo zhe chapa shu ge jiang tawi chapa zona tongba de tenju taidu kong de chapa na de jizuo zhe ji chapa shu ge jiang teni jaga ji kaji dang teni jaga wa kaji dang 平阿嘛做让些没把空多钱讲是，俺你在让些没把小弟这把军队装没些吧是吧？空多钱讲，但这交流嘛些不到，嘛些不到汤，让些没把空多钱讲，让些也没把空多钱讲，但这交流嘛些不到汤。那我电竞这种汤，当把让些也没把确实这么多钱讲。 아니 시지기 띵도 아라시 매바당 기대니 어디 좀 매셔봐. 그봐. 소리 잠도 시자 시지기 띵도 아니 간도 손대세 라시지 매바셔도 가나 기대 좀 매셔. 기대 저기 잠바 라시 좀 매바 좀 매도. 담보 그 가서래. 오만 라시잖니. 야.
So here it says, let's say you've meditated on the instructions we've given above. You are directing your view to analyze all phenomena. If your analysis is really complete, then dependent origination and emptiness must appear to you to go hand in hand, supporting each other. But despite this fact, it appears that people like some of the ancient Indian sages and the earlier Tibetan Buddhists as well, who made it seem that they had grasped the concept of no self-nature or no intrinsic existence, nonetheless did not understand how to explain interdependence. So here there are many of the masters of the past that tried to posit a lack of intrinsic existence, but when they did so, they were no longer able to posit the validity of cause and effect, the infallibility of dependent origination. And then there are those who, trying to accept dependent origination, no longer know how to posit the lack of intrinsic existence. So many masters of the past had this problem of not being able to posit on a single basis the infallibility of dependent origination and a lack of intrinsic or real existence.
Oh yeah, 가서래 왜 마와 나시 전에 라시지 맞음나 안에 자 가서래 자체 전부도 자체는 나시전에但是对面那说那就卡住送来七万呢，谈起青蛙单车吧，听你开了这晚你查完毛利绝不过，现在送那些钱呢，卡住送来七万呢，谈起青蛙单车吧是干了，俺那七万7万，他啷个？我妈来说，啷个个年没写吧的7万那些钱呢？其他话都没写吧钱，卡住送来7万那么是开的青蛙的啥呢？其他那个他们家那些就把送来。 谈起青蛙单些吧，是让些一直把所有的开始单地一被军在一起，单进这话就往引导，让些就知道这意思，让些就毛住呢，单进这话就往小样要嘛这意思，我在单单的刚做7年，让些就毛住吧，在单那么单进知道你我10几个人都没住吧，是吧？让些就毛住呢，俺呢军在叫没些。 균제 좀 마셔나 아니 가서를 라시지 주어 저거 라시지 마 주어 좀 메시 라시지 매바다 규지 뒤잔 저거니 뭐지 시지도 도무로와데 다 오마마제레 간도 수면 신와나 탄지 신와 땡체바 건조 라시지 주어 제가 균제고 규데 가르 라시지 주비 균제做的 가르에서는 땡지 저와 좋아요 电竞之外，情况也在哪些之外嘞？哪些就马中的电竞，看守马电竞之后，中马英国国嘞是，我听这边电竞的，他就路了，俺那哪些之外就把给。然后出把国别的吧，康都送来去哇，那他这情况单去吧，听你看了这边，听你看了这玩意朝马里这边过，是看完了，看完他就完了，俺那电视机这往马里吧。俺那这把钱吧给俺那过，等住了等了当半年到，当年了到完了等了，俺那等住这话，个看是等住这话，你那个这话呀干，俺那让是干起这话，你个个人上，但得送我的，
So here, then there are those who are unable to posit simultaneously on one basis the appearance of things, they're being dependently originated, and their emptiness, the fact that they don't have any sort of inherent or intrinsic existence. So there's a verse from the Praise of Dependent Origination by Je Lama Tsongkhapa that says, by grasping at it, the childish strengthen bondage to extreme views. For the wise, this very fact is the doorway to cut free from the net of elaborations. So by grasping at it, the childish strengthen bondage to extreme views. The childish here, as we've had this reference before, is those who are unable to posit these two together. So they actually hold to this idea of dependent origination as though it had some kind of intrinsic existence. So for them, they actually the grasping at dependent origination as though it were intrinsically existent only strengthens their views or their sort of wrong views. It becomes a way that they are actually going more towards the wrong sort of side of things, whereas for those who are able to understand this properly, for the wise, this very fact, the fact of dependent origination, is the doorway to cut free from the net of elaborations. So by properly understanding dependent origination and cause and effect, they are actually able to realize the lack of intrinsic existence of phenomena and cut through elaborations. But there are those who hold on to dependent origination itself as though it had some kind of intrinsic existence and are only sort of bonding themselves tighter and tighter rather than getting out of the situation.
No. Oh yeah, that's so.